Being cool is an integral part of many pop stars' brands. Being up to date in music, fashion, and just general style is generally well appreciated in pop music, and the way to maintain relevancy, as well as predicting what's next to come in pop culture. Presentation is a large part of what defines coolness, having edge and being bold, whether that be with the music, styles you approach, or a certain unapologetic energy. I think there is a general spectrum to coolness as well. There's the I don't give a damn side of coolness. Think Rihanna and songs like Needed Me and Be Better Have My Money. These songs ooze effortless bravado, reinstating Rihanna's power. She couldn't even be slightly pressed to care about you or your needs because she is the prize, and she has an icy delivery to top it off. This approach to coolness is very standard in genres like hip-hop. And then I think there is the more emotionally led side of coolness that intersects with the overall presentation of an artist. It's very easy to be emotionally driven and cross the line of being ham-fisted and cheesy in presentation or delivery. I think for the longest time Gwen Stefani avoided this because of how she presented herself. She was the face of the 90s ska movement, and there's nothing cooler than being the face of something that is a bit left of center to what everyone else is doing at the moment. To add, she was the lead singer and only female in her rock band. As we all know, that band is No Doubt. Women in rock are often underrepresented. What gave her even more of an edge is that at times she gave an aggressively feminine point of view to her songs. Think of the stone cold classic Just a Girl, and soul-bearing anthems such as Don't Speak and Simple Kind of Life. She was in a rock band, but she was not leading with machismo. She was not simply one of the boys. And of course, how could we forget her fashion? Gwen has become a fashion icon. In her prime, she was known for taking drastic chances with her fashion. And as everyone knows, fashion is an essential part of pop iconography. That's why for people who experienced the prime of No Doubt, and the generation after that experienced Gwen Stefani as a solo artist, Gwen Stefani was just remarkably cool in so many ways. Like sure, critics didn't get Gwen Stefani the solo artist right off the bat, but the people did. She carried over many of her distinctive quirks into her solo music, and exaggerated them. And as a solo artist helped make way for the Gaga-centric waves that would come to prominence in the late 2000s. Love Angel Music Baby, also known as Lamb, released in 2004, is one of the oddest and boldest mainstream pop albums to come out of the early 2000s. It has Holla Back Girl, a minimalist cheerleading song that was a diss to Courtney Love. Luxurious, an R&B slow jam that samples the Isley Brothers about reaping the benefits of your labor. What You Waiting For, an impeccable dance rock song about fear and career procrastination. Rich Girl, a reggae-inspired track which is also a hip-hop crossover with Eve that samples a song from the 1960s. Cool, a tribute to 80s new wave inspired by acts like Cyndi Lauper. And it's all tied together by Gwen's appreciative, if a bit obsessive, love for Harajuku culture. On paper, this sounds like a disaster, and songs and sounds that should not go together. But Gwen makes it all come together with ease for a truly thrilling listen. Her classic pouty voice, left-of-center lyricism, and general quirks are never lost in the sea of exploration of different styles on Lamb, and that's something only a cool person could pull off. Nearly every track on Love Angel Music Baby feels consequential to the album, and even if every song doesn't land, none of them are boring. You can try different things, you can fail, but arguably the greatest offender as a pop star is just being outright boring. 2006's Sweet Escape had its hits and good songs, but it was ultimately a more tamed version of her debut album, likely released to coincide and promote her fashion line, Lamb, at the time. Ultimately, music would take a backseat for Gwen after her second album, and she would prioritize other ventures and her personal life, though she briefly reunited with No Doubt in 2012. Following her divorce from Gavin Rossdale in 2016, she returned to music with This Is What the Truth Feels Like, an album that had a few of the classic Stefaniisms such as Make Me Like You, which is a true gem in every sense of the word and should have been a bigger hit, and the emotionally raw lead single Used to Love You, but ultimately the album overall smooths out all of Gwen's edges, and is an album that took on the most generic radio sounds of the time, ranging from mall electropop to tropical house music. An indication that if Gwen hadn't lost her pulse on what's popular, she at very least had lost touch with what made her music so compelling. This Is What the Truth Feels Like doesn't feel like a Gwen Stefani album as much as it feels like a 2016 album. With Gwen being a more seasoned artist at the time of its release, it begs the question, is becoming less distinctive par for the course for older pop stars? Of course, embracing modernity is normal and to some degree expected, but do you clip away the weirder aspects of your artistry to appeal to a younger generation or to attain commercial success? Do you linger in nostalgia and try to recreate your glory days? Do they pivot and embrace something completely new? I imagine the truth is somewhere in the middle. We have seen that albums and songs from older and more experienced pop stars don't have to be smoothed out adult contemporary stylings that cater to the most common denominator. Look at Beyonce's Renaissance, look at Madonna's Ray of Light in music and her continued embrace of modern but a bit left of center stylings in songs like Bitch I'm Madonna throughout the 2010s. Look at Cher's Believe, which was released decades into her career but influenced modern music and gave Cher a new identity. And then there's artists like David Bowie, who notably went through a lesser period in his career, but ended his career with one of the bravest efforts in pop history while facing his own mortality. But this lane for more experienced pop stars doesn't appear to be the norm just yet. I do think a lot of pop stars, whether that be because of label influence, their want for success, and of course just personal growth, leads them to sometimes distancing themselves from their previous work to fit into a modern landscape, which leaves them in limbo, wanting to appeal to a fan base they once had while also wanting to gain new listeners. But they split themselves up so much in the meantime that the results often lead to nothing burgers, and I think that is true for What the Truth Feels Like. We can't talk about this without talking about personal influence as well. In 2015, she began a relationship with country singer Blake Shelton, and their brands have been remarkably intertwined ever since then. The pairing was a shock to a lot of people given that they are just extremely different, at least in how they present themselves to the public. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on if you actually like their music together, this has led to an uneven amount of influence from Blake on Gwen's artistic career, with her kind of consistently melding into his world with these duets that they do. The same cannot be said for Blake Shelton, who has not embraced the world of Gwen Stefani as a pop artist. Imagine Blake Shelton trying to make a ska or 80s pop inspired track. That's a train wreck I would pay to hear, but in all seriousness, love is a central part of music. Of course the influence is going to be there in some way, but I do dislike when the relationship overtakes the entire artistic identity. Now there's a difference between progressing with your artistry and not losing yourself while trying new things and trying really hard to recreate your past glory, with absolutely no heart involved. And there are many moments before and after This Is What the Truth Feels Like where Gwen seemed to be stuck in nostalgia purgatory, where she was trying to capture her former self, but it didn't have nearly as much merit. The most obvious example is Slow Clap, released in 2021. It's camp, but it so obviously wants to pull from the hollaback girl wheelhouse. Her 2024 album Bouquet sees her going further into Blake Shelton territory, and it is comparatively more stripped down than her previous work. On the cover she sports a cowboy hat, and looks like a Beverly Hills housewife doing a country costume. Don't be fooled by the cowboy hat though. The album is much more inspired by 70s yacht rock, though it definitely has some country influence, especially the collaboration with her husband called Purple Irises that could be considered a straight up country pop track. Honestly, the music is not bad at all, it's just safe. One area I don't think Gwen Stefani has ever lost her spark in is fashion. She still looks amazing, and honestly even when it comes to her voice, she doesn't sound different either. Her performance at Coachella with No Doubt in early 2024 showed that she still had pizzazz and a ton of charisma when performing her older hits. It's interesting that in a renaissance of fun pop, that Gwen Stefani of all people would not latch onto it. You can definitely hear echoes of her artistic DNA in songs like Hot to Go by Chaperone, and songs like Cool sound remarkably timeless in this new wave resurgence. Gwen Stefani once gave the promise of being eternally cool, but now she feels worlds away from it. Trends come and go, but ultimately being cool will always be some form of currency as a pop star. It's always interesting to see some of the wilder and more eccentric pop stars become more conservative with time. On one hand, Gwen Stefani has earned the right to do whatever the fuck she wants. On the other hand, it doesn't make the transformation any less perplexing and at times disappointing. After all, she has nothing to prove anymore, but given her beginnings and artistic highs, there's a constant curiosity of what could be or what could have been. Gwen Stefani has become Gwen Shelton, not only in her personal life, but in her artistic life as well.